I'm Yana Lee, France 24's correspondent in Beijing, covering Greater China and the Koreas. Catch my reporting on TV, on our website, and on all our social media platforms.
Yana Lee, one of the 200 France 24 correspondents around the world.
WESN.
Here's your WESN News on the Hour. I'm Naomi Macnish. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Gulfstream successfully towed to Port of Spain, Trinidad. Christopher Hughes to represent himself in sedition case after dismissing lawyers over high fees. URP foreman Avid Rees fatally shot in Cocorite. And CSEC math pass rate plummets to 36% across the Caribbean. Now for the details. The Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries advises that the refloated Gulfstream barge has successfully been towed to Port of Spain, Trinidad. The barge, which remains in an overturned state, was towed by 2 tugs provided by the National Energy Corporation and an additional support vessel. The journey from Cove, Tobago to Sealots, Port of Spain was approximately 30 hours long and was conducted under the direction of the technical experts from TNT Salvage, LLC and QT Environmental. As a contingency, the overturned barge was escorted by a pollution task force consisting of local responders and crews attached to QT Environmental. The Honorable Stuart Young, Minister of Energy and Energy Industries and Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, thanked all those who have been involved in this effort to contain the oil spill and to bring the Gulfstream safely to Trinidad for disposal. The MEEI also acknowledges the international support provided from the International Tanker Owners Pollution Federation Limited, the International Oil Pollution Compensation Funds, Oil Spill Response Limited, and services from international technical experts from TNT Salvage and QT Environmental. Canadian YouTuber Christopher Hughes will now be defending himself against a seditious charge after dismissing his legal team over a $50,000 US invoice. In an Instagram post Wednesday night, Hughes explained that as a new YouTuber, he could not afford the steep legal fees. Hughes, who has had 4 attorneys since being charged in May, including senior counsel Anand Ramlogan and Pamela Elder, expressed his frustration with the cost, which he described as extortion. The 45-year-old, who faces a potential $3,000 fine or 2 years in prison if convicted, said he will represent himself in court on Friday. Hughes, currently out on $100,000 bail, stated, "Freedom is not free in Trinidad," and promised to update his followers after his court appearance. A 47-year-old man, Avid Rees, also known as Blinny, was shot and killed in Cocorite on Wednesday night. Rees, a foreman with the Unemployment Relief Program and a resident of Upper Waterhole, was found dead at his home around 8:35 p.m. after sustaining multiple gunshot wounds. Western Division Police responding to the scene discovered Rees lying motionless in his gallery. Investigations into the incident are ongoing. The Caribbean Examinations Council has reported that only 36% of students across the region passed the CSEC mathematics exam this year, a significant drop from last year's 43%. The results announced on August 20th in Dominica also revealed a concerning decline in pass rates for other subjects, with Spanish and integrated science also showing poor outcomes. CXC officials expressed the alarm over the declining performance, highlighting the need for urgent interventions in education. Trinidad and Tobago's local results are still being reviewed by education officials. Well, that's news to the hour on WESN. I'm Naomi Macnish. Thanks for watching.
WESN. I'm Andy Johnson. Welcome to the program here on WESN as usual. Let me tell you what we're talking with on this edition of the program. The question is the Ministry of Digital Transformation. The minister in that ministry, or the Minister of Digital Transformation, we put it that way, Senator Hasselbachus. In a discussion about a week ago, I asked him, can he talk about the mandate of the ministry? And if there's a mandate, where are we now, just a couple of years after it was launched? And he spoke for 5 minutes non-stop, just giving me a taste of, or giving us a taste of what the work is going on. And it was around the fact that there was a session for a couple of days last week geared to senior citizens. But before I asked him to come in, let me just read some points that pointed out here in the document, Digital Government in Trinidad and Tobago, which says this is for better government services and more efficient government. Digital literacy of all segments of the population, accessible and affordable broadband access, the digital government pillar, incorporates several distinct bodies of work, and these include the digitization of government information, which will be evident from the increasing amount of information and services freely available on public websites, the digitizing of business processes through the adoption of appropriate digital technology, featuring the coordination and harmonization of these efforts to reduce unnecessary duplication and achieve economies of scale. And 3, the government will take the necessary steps to creation of the enabling environment needed for digital transformation. Minister of Digital Transformation, Hasselbachus, thanks for agreeing so readily to come and talk about it. Good to see you.
Good morning to you, Andy, and yeah, it is indeed good to be here on WESN, and good morning to all your listeners.
All right. So let's, if you can, take it up from where we left off. That was about a week ago, and you talked about around the fact that there was a session going on last week for senior citizens, and that was intriguing because, you know, in a lot of cases, this is a system to coordinate with what else is happening in the current world, in which a lot of people believe that if you are a senior citizen, you sort of not in the group that is being catered for, because this is a young people's business. Dispel that concern and that conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, my mother is over 80 years old. And so when we set out, when the ministry was given its mandate, one of the things that we had to be very wary of is that we live in this fairly intricate and complicated society. And so if we really wanted to have digital transformation and the entreats from that take root, then the only way we were going to be able to do that really was to cater across all the demographics and all of the segments of society that exist. And that starts from the very, very young, who are, by the way, just probably more digitally in tune than we ever were at that age. And those of us who are advanced age, who would have missed a lot of this digital age entirely. And so when we formulate our programs, we formulate the programs across all of that and with all of those people in mind. It's very interesting that we recently got a video. It's going to be in the public domain. If it isn't already, it will be by today, I suspect, where we have testimonials from the participants themselves. We're spread out across all of our ICT access centers, which are all over Trinidad and Tobago, and we keep increasing that number. But if you listen to what they had to say, it is interesting that one, you know, even if they had some form of digital device, they wouldn't show off all the capabilities of it. They used it basically as a rudimentary phone. They learned so much about things, cyber hygiene, how to protect themselves, what to look out for, what to avoid. So it's not just about how to use and what to do, but also what to avoid, how to protect yourself, how to learn. In other words, not just how do we teach you, but how do you learn for yourself on these devices? And of course, the wide range of opportunities that are available for you to explore if you're using these devices.
So what are some of those opportunities?
Sure. So, and it's not just for the elderly. If you talk about across all of society, if you are not digitally connected, you are missing out on a number of things. Not that the things that you can get with digital technology are not available to you apart from that, because we haven't done that. There are very few things that I know in the Trinidad and Tobago society that are not available through traditional analog means. But you get them so much more efficiently. You save a lot of time. a lot of benefits come to you by engaging using the technology. So pretty much all the services that are available of state, if you want to apply for something, if you want to pay for something, for example, I was just speaking with the transport commissioner fairly recently, where they have in the commissioner's office now a kiosk. So you conduct your business and you want to pay, you go to the kiosk, you don't necessarily go to that cashier. As simple as that means, it's the introduction of ICT technology in a business process that makes it easier for the people who are trying to transact the business. It also makes it easier for the people who are conducting the business in terms of the public officers who are delivering the service. So you have that. The e-tax thing is always there. A lot of application processes have gone into that space. Getting information is also significantly easier now. Or we learn platforms. I mean, it's a plethora of things that, I mean, it's just too much to mention. And the thing about these ICT centers that we have, when you go into them, and let's harping on that ICT center thing for a moment, is that it is a staffed facility. It's not a place where you have computers. It's a staffed facility. Those individuals who serve you, they are local individuals. We try to get people from the areas where those ICT centers are. And those people are trained to assist you with anything that you want to do. So if you walk in there, you don't have a computer, you don't have a phone, you don't have a device, and you want to conduct some form of business with the state that is digitally available, you go there and they will help you. They've been used as homework centers, they've been used as training centers, they've been used as areas where it is people go to just to interact with the technology. Scanners are there, printers are there. I mean, and there are training rooms in a lot of these facilities as well, where it is you can train in excess of 20 people in those training rooms. We provide laptops, we provide, I mean, the space in which citizens can engage with digital technology through the Ministry of Digital Transformation and other ministries, divisions, and agencies continues to grow by the day.
So the nature of the public service is under transformation, because, you know, for some people and some of us, there's a stigma about the public service. You go to a government office to get something done. It takes half a day, sometimes it takes more than that. And a lot of people have or had stories about public servants who, you know, so unwilling to be gentle or to be forthcoming with what people want and the attitudes. We've heard that for decades. This is one means of going beyond that kind of image. That's what you're saying.
Certainly. Remember, all of these transformations require a whole lot of government interventions. You're not going to do this. The Ministry of Digital Transformation is not going to digitally transform Trinidad and Tobago on its own. There are multiple facets and components to transformation. I like to put them into 4 categories: people, process, the technology itself, and legislation. So if you have those 4 things and you operate them in some level of synchronicity, you will get to the point where it is that all of them come together and you end up with an output at the end of that benefits all the people. What are the difficult facilities required in that? Well, strangely enough, the technology is the easy piece. It's the people, the process, and the legislative pieces, and each one of them comes with their own challenges. People is all about change. How do I engender a culture of change, not just in the citizenry who is trying to utilize the service, but also in the public officer who is trying to deliver the service? Acceptance of that change and the recognition that that change will benefit all. That's one aspect of it. The process re-engineering, and in some cases the process engineering, where, remember, if you just take old analog processes and put them and use digital technology to administer them, it doesn't work. It doesn't become more efficient. As a matter of fact, if you do that without making the necessary consideration, it makes the process worse. So you have to have digital processes to allow for the transformation to continue. The technology is merely the conduit by which those processes become a reality. And the legislation is important because everything that we do, if it wants to be entrenched, has to somehow or the other be enabled in law. And so if we don't have the legislation keeping full step with all of the changes that we're trying to make, then you have other issues. And if you don't do that, then these are the issues that occur. You have issues with confidence. You have issues with trust. You have issues with your ability to prosecute when malfeasance happens, etc., etc. So all of these things have to happen in tandem. And obviously we need sister agencies to do that. We need the civil society to help us with that. We need the academics to help us with that. I mean, it's all about and all encompassing. The private sector is a key component of it. All of this has to happen for this to be successful.
Yeah, because one of the notes that I made in looking up some of the stuff here, private sector has to be working in tandem with the government.
Yes. Yeah, the private sector is a key component to this. If you just take the telecommunications sector as an example, the government doesn't own the telecommunications sector in Trinidad and Tobago. It's owned by private industry. It's regulated by the regulator, the Telecommunications Authority. But all the investment, all of the things that go along with the creation, management, operation of efficient telecommunication systems, and dare I say ICT systems that are embedded in them, are all in private hands. How do you, if you want to progress the way in which digital transformation and the utilization and adoption of digital technology in Trinidad and Tobago, if that has to happen, just using the telecommunications sector as an example, you must engage with them and they must partner with you for this to work in any way. Similar, there are some industries, as it would happen in any emerging space that you have. What happens a lot is that some of the industry that you need doesn't exist yet or is not mature enough yet. And we as a government have to be the enabler of that to ensure that those industries acknowledge that that is something that is there as an opportunity, find ways to get engaged them and for those industries to grow. I think the best example of that I can see that is probably evident to everybody is the cybersecurity space. 10 years ago, there were only so many companies that would engage in any discussion or operation of cybersecurity within Trinidad and Tobago, and they would have been large external companies. You look around today, we can establish a number, and I can easily call 5 of them by own, companies that are local in nature, locally owned, where cybersecurity is their primary business. That is happening because, again, the enabling environment is there. The Minister of Finance in his budget presentation created allowances for people who want to secure their businesses as they should. And that has spawned, obviously, an increase in that type of business. So it's an ecosystem in which the government sometimes is the driver, but ultimately private sector takes control of it and it goes with the benefits that they bring to it in terms of efficiency, marketing, etc.
Explain a little more to people who don't quite understand what is meant by cybersecurity.
So in the cybersecurity space, as simply as I can put it, in any endeavor, you have to secure it. If you build a house and you want to protect what is inside of it, then you put certain security measures in place to protect the contents, to protect your movement within and out of it, protected from disaster, protected from natural disasters, protected from man-made disasters, fire, etc. Cybersecurity is simply that from within the cyberspace environment, within the digital space. And digital space can be as simple as things as your phone. Phone is a very good example of a digital device, a laptop, a tablet, a computer. But in terms of larger scale, you're talking about the systems that drive business, the systems that drive, you want to book a flight, you want to call something on Trini Rideshare. Those things are built on electronic systems, and those systems must be protected. And the business of cybersecurity is the protection through the monitoring, through the frequent updates and checks on it, through building cyber resilience, which is making sure that even if attacks happen, that the service continues to work. All of that is embodied in when we talk about cybersecurity. That is what we're talking about. It is about protecting the infrastructure, the software, the hardware, but more so protecting the services that you and I use every day from people who will do it harm, as we call them bad actors.
Yeah, and we're talking about a situation in which it will become I would say a thing of the past at the end of this day. When let's take this point here. Number one, the digitization of government information, which will be evident from the increasing amount of information and services freely available on government websites. So, in a manner of speaking, one doesn't have to get up anywhere and seek to go to a government office to get anything done. Increasingly, that is going to be the case. If you acquit yourself and acquire these skills, you do that from home on a machine, a tablet, or even a phone. That's
the key. This is all about, remember, the reason why, there are a couple of reasons why people digitalize things. In the case of governments, you do it for a number of reasons. One, obviously for the efficiencies that it creates and the ease in which people can access services. There's another one which a lot of people don't get as well. Apart from its efficiency and so on, it is actually less expensive than doing it any other way. And it does generate the least amount of frustration with customers when you're trying to implement it. Remember, we're doing all of this to make the society better. It's not about doing it just because it's nice and so everybody does a trending thing. There are fundamental reasons why governments all over the world have moved to digital spaces. If we are successful, wrong statement, as we continue to be successful in the endeavors that we have, remember, it's not all up to the Ministry of Digital Transformation. We provide guidance in some cases, we provide support in other cases. But if you look around you every day, every week, something new is being launched. At the Agriculture Expo we had quite successfully on the weekend past, one of the things that was launched was you can now apply for your farmer's license, whatever that they call it, farmer certificate, or register to be a farmer digitally. Now, that didn't happen before. It's not the Ministry of Digital Transformation doing this. We were involved and we assisted, but it's the Ministry of Agriculture doing it. The Ministry of Local Government launched an app whereby you can easily report things that are happening that would be up to things that they should address. Potholes on the roads for which they are responsible. Anything that is associated with them, you have an app that you can do it. It will geolocate it, automate where the thing is, identify all of that, and they will be able to provide feedback for you. All of these things are happening. The ability to apply for the same benefit that I was talking about in the cybersecurity space, that has been launched already. The ICNTT has launched an app whereby you can make your application and be approved for that online. You keep adding, and every time you look into a different ministry or division or an agency, you're seeing that. And Andy, the one thing that I want to point out from this, if you want to talk about the successes of the ministry, one of the things that I want to point out is that all of those applications were built by people from Trinidad and Tobago. We have gotten to the point where the society, the technology people, I think even a lot of the intellectuals, all of them have come to the realization of the talent that we have here and the ability of that talent to create things, products, applications, services that are of world-class, world standard, world grade, but they're being done by our own people right here in Trinidad and Tobago. And that acceptance, the fact that people don't, boy, that's good for something that built in Trinidad, that attitude has gone away, where people are now saying, yes, we are as good as and can compete the things that we build with the best in the world. And so armed with that, a number of the technologists within the ministries, divisions, and agencies have become empowered and are now being asked to produce digital items for the consumption of the public and for the delivery by the public officers, but locally done. And that makes it so much more sustainable.
And that kind of competence just came from people's natural instincts or endowments that we didn't have to go and learn stuff from scratch to get to the point where you become efficient in this realm, as it were.
Our tertiary level and technological institutes that we have in Trinidad and Tobago are second to none. We have some of the best, and we produce a lot of the best. And even with that, through the government, through its scholarships, through its bursaries, at the Ministry of Digital Transformation, which I lead, when the Prime Minister formed that ministry on the 12th of July, 2021, one of the things that he told me specifically is, listen, make sure that you fill this ministry with young people. And guess where we're getting these young people from is university graduates. We have a program that we have, and it's been going on for 3 years now, where we grab, and thanks to the Ministry of Education for allowing us to do that, we get a lot of returning scholars. And we bring them in, put them through an indoctrination program, put them through an orientation program, and set them to work. The people who have been fortunate enough to work with us, and of those intakes we've had 3 of them so far. Those people, even most of them, and I mean over 90-something% of them, who, even though they have completed their of requirements for the state, have decided to stay and work with us in the ministry when, I mean, these people can be earning way more money in the private sector. What we do with them is actually put them to work on programs that are being created mostly by them, administered by entities who would have done it before in foreign entities. This is a really important point, Andy, and I'll take a minute just to explain it if you'll allow me.
Go ahead.
What happens with us on these programs is actually quite simple. When we set out to build a lot of the underlying technology that is required for things to happen in the digital space, and those projects will be like the interoperability project that we're doing with Estonia, the EID project that we're doing with the UNDP, and so on. Those projects are fundamental to as building blocks upon which digital services are going to be built across Trinidad and Tobago. We had options. We have a memorandum of understanding with the Estonian government. We could have gone to them and told them, give us a firm to build out what we need for our infrastructure. And they do have people who could do that. A number of other countries have done that. The issue with that, as far as I am concerned, is that it ties you into something that perpetuates a way in which you can't get out of it. You will have them build your services, you will have them monitor the services, you'll have them develop more services as you'll need them. You'll have them maintain and operate your systems. We opted for a different plan. The plan that we opted for is that we will contract your people, yes. We're using open source technology, yes. So there's very little cost attached to the software. But we will ask your expertise to come here and train our people in how to build it and how to continue to develop it going forward. It takes a bit longer, but if you look at the model of sustainability, it works significantly more. We own the IP for the product that we've created. The people who are building it up, people who are working right here in Trinidad and Tobago, and as we want to continue to develop it and grow it, they have the skill set to do it. We have our Estonian friends there always to help us if we run into an issue that we can't handle. But predominantly the work is going to be done and eventually taken over completely by local resources here in Trinidad. That is the way in which we've built all of what we're doing within the Ministry of Digital Transformation, and we extend that type of model to the rest of state, and it is working. It is really important that we get that point, that we're using local technology, local expertise in the development of the technology that is going to continue to drive this country well into the future.
All right, I want to come back on that a little bit, but you mentioned Estonia a moment ago, and it reminds me, this is more than a decade ago. We're going on a family vacation, and we were going to London in the first leg, and there was someone sitting across the aisle from me on the flight, and he's a brother of a lady named Jean Turpin. They are people from Siparia and so on. We used to work together when I was at Trinidad Broadcasting, and he was going to Estonia, and he mentioned part of what it was then, and that was more than a decade ago. And you said, so that's a kind of place that was used as a, what do you call it? Some place where this was happening, and it was something that was going to take over the world, and we got to that point now. I remember that all the time.
Yeah, Estonia is acknowledged globally as one of the leaders in digital services across state. They were at 99% when I visited them a few years ago in terms of services that are available digitally to the population. They are now at 100%. The one that they had left out was divorce, actually. I think they had marriage and divorce as one that they could have that simply didn't do. And I think now they have. So 100% of the services of state are available online in the country of Estonia. We obviously, not everything that can be digitalized, as they would have discovered, should be digitalized. There are some things that people want to hold for various reasons, whether they be cultural, whether they be religious, whether they be, and I mean, we live in that multicultural, multi-religious environment. So it's multidimensional in our case. So we have to tread very carefully in some of the things that we introduce. But generally, as we continue to increase the number of services that are digitally available, and as we increase the digital IQ of the society, more and more and more and more things are going to become available to us. Estonia is just the model that we use, and the government arrangement has opened up a wide range of companies and skill sets within Estonia that we are utilizing today in the build of our own services.
So is there a point ahead at which the responsibilities, all the responsibilities for a digitized society would have been met, and that maybe there would be no need for a ministry called the Ministry of Digital Transformation, because we would have been digitally transformed sufficiently entirely?
In any endeavor of life, you have to have somebody at the steering wheel. I don't know anything that has become completely independent of any level of scrutiny and to some extent level of control. The Ministry of Digital Transformation is a partnership ministry. It's an enabling ministry. Ministries are building their own services with just ensuring that they conform to the policies that are set relative to their security, their ease of use, their universality, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And those things will always find themselves under review. But in this flywheel type of environment, the pace at which things will happen will always continue to increase. And you'll get to a saturation point where the majority of the essential services that need to be digitalized would have happened. That's sure that could happen. But there are always new ways to do it. And the way in which technology works is that you always continue to review what you have in an effort to make it better. Those functions can easily become devolved into different places. Different people can take control of it. The Standard Bureau can look at electronic things the way they are. The auditing of ICT things can happen now. Central Audit probably could increase their capacity. The Auditor General reports will now include ICT components and so on. And so various functions of that can happen. But ultimately, you'll always have to have some agency, some function that fulfills the requirement of ensuring that we remain on the correct rails, ensuring that we remain within the bounds and boundaries of best industry practice, of ensuring that people have not gone off on tangents and started to go into spaces where they should not. All of those things will happen across multiple agencies. We'll always have to have some entity that is there looking to make sure that we're going in the right direction and not going off course.
Whenever we talk, my mind goes to your dear mother, who is a cultural colossus in Trinidad and Tobago. You have become history-making in the sense that you were the first person to be put in a position to get us where it is evident that we have to go in terms of digitization. How do you regard that? I mean, so there will not be a second first minister of digital transformation. That is historic.
Certainly they would not, and I mean, praise should be given to the vision of the Prime Minister for identifying that and establishing it. The fact that, remember initially this entire program and set of things that we set out to do was subsumed within a ministry. And the Prime Minister looked at it and said, listen, this thing requires a ministry of its own. And I was asked at that time to task it. But digital transformation in Trinidad and Tobago didn't start now. This has been going on for some time. And if you cast your mind way back, you could go probably as far back as Fast Forward, which was an immensely successful program in terms of at the time, moving Trinidad and Tobago digitally forward. That was phenomenal and quite successful. And then there was a waning period in which it just kind of meandered along and some things didn't progress and so on. When I got this mandate as an independent ministry to keep that, the idea was to bring it back to the forefront, accelerate it, make sure that it was built on a sustainable path, that it can go ahead and continue, and also to embed it in the society so that the benefits of the program trickle down all the way down to all members of Trinidad and Tobago. Not just the consuming public, but also the officers who deliver the services as well.
What will have to be happening for it to be said that, in this regard at least, your work is done, the platforms are set, and the takeoff has happened? Has been completed.
The work will never end. Unfortunately, work is of that nature. The work will never end. In terms of the fundamental things that are required for transformation to continue, we've already started them. And strangely enough, they're not all technology-based. Communication is a very important factor in that. How do we communicate all of these great things that we're doing, and how do we communicate, educate, and raise the literacy, the digital literacy level of our country, so that the things that we're building will be utilized. That is a real key and fundamental one. That is happening already, because you're hearing the clamor now for digital services where that was not something that was thought about before. So that is happening. The raising of the literacy is going on, and there are a number of programs, and we highlighted only the one for senior citizens, but we have a lot of them going on. We have, so that's a big part of it. the building of trust is also significant. The building of trust is you making a conscious decision. Listen, let me pick something simple. I am going to pay my electricity bill. And I'm going to pay it electronically. So I'm not going down to the TNTech office. I'm not going to line up. I'm not going to run through the rain to get it. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to use my electronic device and I'm going to pay this bill and I'm going to be confident that it's paid. And if something happens, I have recourse in that I can validate that I did pay it and everything will be fine. That getting to that is also a key component. Else we build all this technology and nobody uses it. Those are the softer pieces of this that have already started and have started to embed themselves. You're seeing people being more cybersecurity conscious. Look at what happened recently with the CrowdStrike update. It wasn't a cyber attack, but it's the implement of it made it appear so to be. The queries that came to the ministry, the reaction of the state and the reaction of the private sector and the information, including the media who were trying what was happening and allowing us to get the message out that this is something that we have in hand, this is where we are. The collaboration of different agencies to be able to provide information to the public that they don't have to panic, that this is all right, that if something has happened, this is what you need to do. The use of the Ministry of National Security, CSID, the use of the Office of the Prime Minister Communications Division, the fact that we continue to work with all of the members of state, including the private sector and you, of course, and your station and the journalism people. All of that came together in a very short space of time to bring calm and comfort to the people that this is something that we have in hand and we're doing it. But the fact that people were aware that it happened, the fact that people were concerned that it happened, and the fact that people wanted to know what was happening is a significant step forward in what we do. Notice I did not mention a single piece of technology, a single computer or anything like that.
Yes.
That is the kind of thing, that is the kind of change that is lasting, and that is the kind of change that we have to inculcate.
So what is the Digital Society ICT for All? Minister Hasselbacher, thank you very much for talking with us on this issue.
Always good to hear you. Pleasant morning to you and WESN. Please continue the good work that you do.
Thank you very much. This has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
WESN.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Pastor J, I want to get a tattoo.
You really want
to me. Respond to me how you would respond to me.
The first question I'll ask is why?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say,
services.
we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. So we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
We are WESN, the premier platform for Caribbean content. WESN, covering West, East, South, and North. WESN, we entertainment, sports, and news. WESN, available on Greendot 7, Amplia 118, Airlink 17, Bmobile 107, Digicel 21, ICNTT 105, and Flow 110. Connect with us at WESNCC or stream online at www.wesncc.com. WESN, your premier platform for Caribbean content.
Bab el Tebanne. Ahmed Chaban works as a hairdresser here. For 5 years until 2013, he fought with the hardline Sunni Islamists against Bashar al-Assad's regime.
Jabal Mahsen were our enemies. Their side wanted to kill all of us. We couldn't let them do that, so we fired back 2,500 rounds. At that time, we were each other's main targets. We were in defense mode. Look, sometimes we were standing here. I was looking after customers, styling hair, and all of a sudden, bang, bang, gunfire. I sent the customer home, took my jacket, picked up my rifle. I opened up the door and off we went up there. It was war. That all happened regularly. We set up this secret door for protection.
This door, now blocked, led to the Piccadilly Cinema, one of the many cinemas in the city reduced to rubble. Through these holes, the fighters of Bab el Tebanne had a direct line of sight to their enemies.
This was once a cinema, but it became a war zone, one of the main battlegrounds for sniper fire. We're now approaching the spot that we used as a base to fire on Jabal Mahsen. To avoid going to their level on the street where they could fire at us, we came here. We had the advantage of higher ground. As soon as they fired, we shot back.
On these walls, graffiti left by Ahmed's brothers in arms.
Half of them lost their lives. Others left the country. This one left, and most of these died. I lost many friends. What a pity they had to die so young. It makes me sad. I've buried my best friends. I've lost so much time. I was injured and I made my mother cry. What a shame.
On the other side of Syria Street lies Jabal Mohsen. From his house built on higher ground, Ali Omar can also keep an eye on his former enemies.
Can you see the brick building with white on top? That's the cinema. I could fire on them from my bedroom windows. I used to hide behind this barricade and take shots at the cinema.
Just like Ahmed, Ali was a fighter. Just like him, he was injured, arrested, and sent to prison. After his release, he had to adapt to the fragile peace his country now enjoys. Ali now runs a hookah bar, a pastime more than a job. It helps to keep his mind off the past.
We were brainwashed. We were told that if we didn't defend ourselves, they would take our houses and kill us. We were told our mothers and fathers would die before our very eyes. They managed to convince us. I was young, perhaps too young, and I liked firearms. When I was given a rifle and ammunition for free, I thought it was great.
Just like Ahmed's, Ali's house had a secret door.
Over here, we had access to the army positions, and through there we had an exit route. I was hoping never to open this door again. I opened it just to show you. It reminds me of what we went through. And all that I remember is the bad. I can't even recall one good thing.
In Jabal Mohsen, normal life has returned. Have a coffee, play cards, that type of daily routine in this area was unthinkable a decade ago.
Things have changed a lot. During the war, we could not even sit here during a truce. It was far too exposed.
On Syria Street, former fighters can talk freely about their past lives, largely thanks to one woman, Leah Baroudi, who graduated from a top business school in France. She left her career as an international trade advisor to return to Lebanon and help rebuild communities.
When the conflict was raging between 2008 and 2015, no one could move freely. The fighting was intense. Today, things are back to normal. People walk easily between neighborhoods, and there are people outdoors once again. Bonjour!
In 2011, Leah Baroudi founded an NGO called March. Then, in 2016, she opened a wesn, a community cafe on Syria Street. Former fighters work there in a peaceful atmosphere, as if the conflict never took place. In this highly symbolic place, Leah Baroudi works at reintegrating ex-prisoners and former paramilitaries into society, a hard task as many have such a troubled past.
What these men have in common is their suffering. They saw war, death. They were fighters here, in Syria or elsewhere. Most are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. Because they grew up with violence, they became desensitized to many things. Here we try to reconnect them to their feelings.
The NGO developed in time, taking into account the needs of the ex-paramilitaries, but caring also for the women on both sides, to offer them a viable alternative to conflict. From drama to cooking and wood workshops, psychological help and legal aid initiatives, all is done to bring yesterday's enemies together and help restore some hope for the younger ones. Despite these efforts, though, Leah Baroudi realizes that peace remains fragile.
Many things scare me. Some political agendas cannot be controlled. And it would be naive to think they can be. It's not our goal as an NGO, but if we can help save lives, we will have done our best.
Ahmed and Ali have been coming here for 9 years. Leah Baroudi gave them jobs that helped them survive. It's a success, even if many were suspicious at the start.
On the first day, I arrived here and came face to face with Ahmed. We had a troubled past. I was in shock. I thought he was here to kill me, that he was going to shoot me.
Within the network, we learned to put our hatred aside and work on common points, friendship, to become brothers again. 8 or 9 years later, we no longer want to fight.
Today, Ahmed and Ali have put their pasts behind them. For others, though, the present is increasingly under threat. In the last 4 years, the economic crisis has worsened. No one has been spared. The country is in ruins. The currency has lost its value. In areas like these, where unemployment was rife, the downturn has hit even harder. Bilal Zogby is unemployed and has 2 children. He recently paid a smuggler to take him and his family to Europe by sea. But then his past caught up with him.
I sold my furniture and the house to pay for the trip. And as I was about to leave, I was stopped. Since the conflict, I've been a fugitive. So I was arrested and sent to prison for 1 year. The money from the house and the furniture paid for prison expenses and for a lawyer. I lost my house, my furniture. I lost everything.
Bilal lives with 13 other people in this flat that bears all the marks of past fighting. The windows overlook Syria Street.
On both sides there were barricades. They were shooting at each other. And this apartment took all the fire. It would take at least $5,000 to $10,000 to get it looking like a home again. If I could find some work to raise some money, I'd go back. My decision was because there's no work here. It's disgusting. I'd rather we all die at sea than die every day here. We die 2,000 times a day here. I can't even buy diapers and milk for my 2 children.
Despite his situation, Bilal says he's put the past conflict aside. There is a greater danger that goes beyond the reach of both communities.
Our biggest enemy is the economic crisis, the poverty. It unites the inhabitants of Bab el Tabani and Jabal Morsan. What's important is that there isn't any more fighting. We are not going to go back into the conflict. That's enough for us. We're tired of all this.
Some here do not share Bilal's perspective. A younger generation which didn't know the conflict now hangs around the same streets. With a deepening economic crisis, drugs and weapons are back. Syria Street has a security problem once again. A young man agrees to talk about it, but wants to stay anonymous. He's only 20, but shows off his scars like trophies.
I got stabbed here. When it happened, I realized I had to protect myself, so I bought this. It's a pistol, the least I could do. Hardly anything, $150 for a Turkish-made pistol. This is worth around $1,000. Today on the street, you come across a lot of people on drugs. Instead of being afraid, keep your gun in your waistband and no one will cross you. No, if they could protect us, all this would never have happened. When you see your friends fall into addiction, it's best to stay away, because you risk being drawn in. Today you'll find cannabis, Captagon, ephedrine on the street. People take all these drugs to forget everything. Because of the economic crisis, it's the only thing that keeps them busy.
On Syria Street, Leia Baroudi has organised a festival to bring young people from both communities together, along with members of the army. Soldiers are again trying to act as a catalyst for a sense of unity.
The objective of this festival is to counter the circulation of drugs and weapons on the street, to restore security and peace to the area. The most remarkable thing is the convergence of former enemy factions, be that the army or Jabal Mohsen and Bab el-Tibani.
Among military parades and shows, former soldiers and combatants pull out all the stops to bring life and a spirit of festival to Syria Street. Ahmed and Ali have become model citizens, even if they know that peace remains precarious here. Lebanon has long been fertile ground for conflicts.
Wissam Sharaf and Rami Aisha revisiting Syria Street for France 24. Well, that's all from this week's edition. Of course, you can catch it again and all the previous editions as well on our website at france24.com. More news coming up for you in just a moment. Thanks for watching.
Trust is our most precious asset. Every day, around the world, France 24, RFI and Monte Carlo Doualier join forces to bring you free, independent, verified, balanced information that fights manipulation, and in 21 languages. France Média Monde has been awarded the Journalism Trust Initiative Standard, which guarantees the professionalism and reliability of our international news media with a score of 100%. Trust is not automatic. It must be earned and cultivated. Thank you for your trust.
Liberté, égalité, actualité. 24, your window on the world. Liberté, égalité, actualité.
I'm Paul Rees, covering stories from Sweden for France 24, live from Stockholm and on France 24 news programmes.
Paul Rees, one of the 200 France 24 correspondents around the world.
Hello, you're watching France 24. I'm Olivia Salazar-Winspear, and these are the top stories from around the world. Zelensky should sit down for talks with the Russians to end the war. That's the message from Narendra Modi as the Indian Prime Minister meets with the Ukrainian President in Kyiv to bid to mediate between Russia and Ukraine. Some progress has been made in talks hoping to secure a ceasefire in Gaza. Timid optimism from the White House regarding the negotiations in Cairo, where they're also discussing the possibility of a hostage deal. Meanwhile, Israeli strikes continue to hit the Palestinian enclave, with dozens more people killed. And negotiations are underway here in France as Emmanuel Macron meets with key political players 7 weeks after inconclusive elections. Talks started with the leftist New Popular Front, who are pushing for Lucie Castet to be their next Prime Minister. Our reporter Antonia Kerrigan brings us the latest from the Elysee. Well, it's a historic visit that could pave the way for peace. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in Ukraine today, meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky to show his support for the country. Pushing for a diplomatic resolution, Modi has said that the ongoing war with Russia cannot be resolved on the battlefield. Yet many fear that India and Russia's close ties could jeopardize mediation. Modi was also in Russia last month, where he met with Vladimir Putin. Here's more from the Indian president, speaking from Kyiv.
2 years ago in Samarkand, when I had met President Putin, I had told him, looking into his eye in front of the media, that this is not the era of war. And last month as well, when I visited Russia to meet President Putin, I told him very clearly that problems cannot be resolved on the battlefield. The only way of resolving problems is through dialogue and through diplomacy. I assure you that for all those efforts being made towards peace, India is ready to make its proactive contribution. And I personally, as a friend, if there is any role that I can play, I would very much like to play that role towards peaceful resolution.
Lebanese authorities say 7 people have been killed by Israeli strikes in the south of the country, with Hezbollah saying 3 of those fatalities came from their ranks. There have been regular exchanges of fire at the border between the two countries since the October 7th murders and kidnappings sparked the ongoing war in Gaza. Meanwhile, Israel's military offensive continues in the Gaza Strip, where at least 42 people have been killed in the last 24 hours. The 10-month war in the Palestinian territory has now claimed more than 40,000 lives. Eliza Herbert has more.
In the streets of Deir el-Balah, these Palestinians are marking, coordinating and mourning the bodies of their dead. It's a process that has become too familiar in the Gaza Strip, where the death toll has exceeded 40,265 people, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. At dawn in the town in central Gaza, explosions and shots could be heard to the east. Deir el-Balah currently houses around 1 million residents and displaced people, many who have heeded persistent evacuation orders from the Israeli government. According to a top UN humanitarian official, 12 evacuation orders have already been issued in August, and 90% of Gaza's population has been displaced in the 10 months since October 7. He says the evacuations endanger civilians instead of protecting them, as people are forced to flee to areas with no medical care, shelter and limited access to water and humanitarian supplies.
The way forward is as clear as it is urgent. Protect civilians, release the hostages, facilitate humanitarian access, agree on a ceasefire.
In Israel too, many citizens want a ceasefire deal. They want the war to end and for the hostages to be returned. But hope is hard to maintain.
I feel despair. It's hard. There's no hope. It seems like no one cares. It feels like the hostages are sitting there and no one is really trying to bring them back.
It's been postponed so many times and cancelled so many times. I say this with sorrow. I don't see it happening.
Mediators from Qatar, Egypt and the United States continue to push for an agreement, but they need Israel and Hamas leaders to cooperate for the sake of their people.
Well, talks hoping to bring that war to an end are underway. Israeli negotiators were in Cairo on Friday for talks on a possible ceasefire and a hostage deal. But the presence of their troops on Gaza's southern border is still a major sticking point. The White House says, however, that there has been some progress in that attempt at mediation. 7 weeks after elections here in France gave no party an outright majority, Emmanuel Macron has kicked off talks with key politicians to choose a prime minister and break that political deadlock. The French president met with members of the new Popular Front coalition first. They won the most seats in the French parliament in that vote. Their nominee for prime minister is Lucie Castet, a civil servant who's not very well known by the general public. And for more on that story, we can now cross to France 24's Antonia Kerrigan, who's reporting from the Elysée. Antonia, this is the first of 2 days consultation with those parties. And after the new Popular Front went in for talks this morning, we had the centrist group. They spoke to Macron. Next up, the Republicans. Now, we've heard some names from this party thrown around, the Republicans. They could be key in terms of the prime ministerial position.
Absolutely. It's quite hard to decipher at this stage. What it's worth knowing about the Republicans, they were once the prominent right-wing political force in France. They've since been massively eclipsed by the far right and what we now see as the centrist bloc, this Macronist part of the political landscape. They now have just 63 seats in Parliament. However, as you say, they could have a decisive role. In there with the president this afternoon has been Laurent Wauquiez, whose big plan is a legislative pact. And that is a list of policies that he would like to see his party support any government in pushing through. On that list was 25 billion euros of budget cuts, the further hardening of the recently passed immigration law, most specifically to reduce access to certain social provisions for migrants, and also the more nebulous restoring of authority, which we've heard a lot about on the right-hand side of the political spectrum in the last few months. So he's not necessarily suggesting a coalition. He's suggesting a legislative pact, a pact to get behind these specific policy ideas. Also floated, though, as a hypothesis that's going around is the idea of a Republican-led coalition, the idea being that the Republicans do have common ground with the centrist bloc and would, as such, perhaps be able to bring together enough unity behind certain policies in which the centrist bloc no longer has the legitimacy to do, as they got such a thorough dressing down in these recent elections. So it's all fairly hard to unpick at this stage, but they're a small party, but they may have some real sway.
Now, as I mentioned, there are more talks on Monday. Tell us what we can expect over the coming days. What's the timeline here?
Well, the timeline is unusual. The president met with the left today. He met with the centrists, as you say, although the centrists, it was more symbolic than anything else, as there is a consensus within that bloc that the centrists can't go forward and be the next one to name a prime minister. Then had the Republicans this afternoon. On Monday, it will be the national rally, accompanied by Éric Ciotti, who's a sort of pariah of the Republican Party, who's once a Republican, then sort of quite dramatically changed sides in the run-up to the elections. So he's meeting with them on Monday. We're not expecting a government to come out of that meeting. That would be extremely unlikely, given the enormous cross-party efforts that went into avoiding a national rally win in these elections. The next big date in our calendar we've got to be aware of is the Paralympics kicking off on Wednesday. So, and he did say to the NFP this morning, Olivier Faure said that the president recognised the importance of a rapid decision. Also worth bearing in mind, there is a budget to be put to Parliament at the beginning of October. So the pressure is on. Really, what we're expecting, what the parties are calling for, what they're demanding is a choice on Tuesday.
Thank you very much, Antonia Kerrigan, there reporting for us from the Elysée. Now, Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris formally accepted her party's nomination for president, saying that she'll fight for America, and she promised a new way forward. She'll go head-to-head with Republican candidate Donald Trump in 11 weeks' time. And after a very well-attended national convention this week, she's enjoying a slim lead in the polls. She'll have to sustain that momentum for the campaign trail now, especially in the battleground states where American elections are typically fought quite fiercely. And with 41 million young Americans now classed as Gen Z, Democrats and Republicans are heading online to shore up that youth vote. Donald Trump has done a series of interviews with high-profile online personalities, but the announcement of Kamala Harris's candidacy unleashed a new digital movement. Fraser Jackson reports.
As Kamala Harris emerged as the clear successor to Joe Biden, an explosion of green, palm tree emojis and coconuts filled the timelines and news feeds of anyone trying to get to know the new Democratic nominee. Harris's meteoric rise to the top of the Democratic ticket has been propelled by a young social media team which has harnessed the power of the internet to spread their candidate's message. So anyone trying to make heads or tails of this election needs to speak the language of internet memes, basically short videos or photos posted online.
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? Coconut, 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 coconut.
Her supporters seized upon a once mocked clip about something her mother said to her growing up, making it go viral and unleashing a tsunami of remixes and coconut emojis across the internet.
You just fell out of a coconut.
Yeah, 360. When you're in the mirror, do you know what you see?
The virality continued as Kamala HQ embraced Brat Green, a color which references singer Charlie XCX's summer smash album, Brat, a state of mind Charlie described like this.
You're just like that girl who is a little messy and likes to party and like maybe says some like dumb things sometimes, who like feels herself but then also like maybe has a breakdown, but like it's Brat, you're Brat, that's Brat.
But Harris's campaign is going beyond the memes, mobilizing an army of influencers and content creators in hopes of reaching the 8 million young people who have come of voting age since 2020. At the DNC, creators were given access to the Harris campaign, and on the sidelines of the convention, a hot ticket event called Hotties for Harris, a term coined by rap superstar Megan Thee Stallion when she appeared alongside the Democratic nominee at a rally in Georgia. Hotties for Harris brought together influencers and creators to spread the message to their followers about feminist issues such as abortion access, a lightning rod issue in 2024.
Younger people are not getting their news in traditional outlets anymore. They're not sitting down and turning on NBC and CBS and Fox. That's just not what they're doing. They're getting their news online from TikTok, and they're getting it, you know, that's where they're consuming their information now. And they want to get information. They trust information when it comes from a trusted source, and they feel like these influencers are friends. When you overlay those two things, it makes sense to work with influencers to distribute news, but to make sure that they're doing it in an authentic way.
But Harris's campaign isn't the only one trying to unleash the power of the internet. Republican nominee Donald Trump has engaged in a series of interviews with popular online figures such as Logan Paul, Aiden Ross, and Elon Musk. In an election which could be decided by just a few thousand votes across a handful of battleground states, both sides hope the youth vote could help them across the line on November 5th.
Next, in Venezuela, the Supreme Court has backed President Nicolas Maduro's claims that he won last month's presidential election. They also stated that voting tallies published online showing that he lost by a landslide were forged. This comes amid protests at home and international criticism following the contested July 28th vote, where Maduro, a self-described socialist, was seeking a third six-year term. Well, here's his response to that ruling with a word from opposition candidate Edmundo Gonzalez following the verdict from the Supreme Court.
The nation's judicial body issued a historic and forceful sentence. And we say from the streets of La Guaira and Venezuela, holy word, let there be peace. Absolute respect.
The world knows that the Venezuelan Supreme Court stopped being an impartial court at the service of justice a long time ago and has become the enforcement arm of Nicolas Maduro. We won overwhelmingly, and we have the tallies to prove it.
Well, that's all for this bulletin, but do stay with us. We'll have more news coming up here on France 24 in just a moment. Emigres, exiles and refugees, foreigners everywhere. That's the evocative title and guiding theme of this year's Venice Biennale, the oldest and largest showcase of contemporary art in the world. Our arts editor Eve Jackson is there for the opening of this 60th edition. Eve, hi. Tell us what's in store.
This breathtaking floating city hosts what many people call the Olympics of the art world every 2 years. Now, this is the original art biennale on which all others in the world are based, and it's also the place to see the world's best artists all in one place. Now, the last edition, which was in 2022, had record attendance. This year's event opens on Saturday. It runs until November, and in that time, it's expected that the city will welcome around 800,000 visitors. Now, the Biennale consists of dozens of exhibitions. There is an enormous central exhibition, and there are 90 national pavilions in which individual countries celebrate their best artists. And although this might seem, Olivia, like a la-di-da art event in one of the world's prettiest cities, the real world is very much present here. War, refugees, colonialism and conflict are the key themes of this year's event.
Those are the sort of hard-hitting issues that we're seeing in the headlines at the moment too, of course. The Israel-Hamas war is having an impact on the Biennale.
It certainly is. Now, there's a collective of pro-Palestinian activists that are called the Art Not Genocide Alliance, or ANGA for short, and they've been calling for the exclusion of Israel at this year's Biennale. In an open letter, they criticised the military action in Gaza. The letter condemns what it says are the double standards of the Biennale organisers. Now, 2 years ago, the organisers condemned Russia's war against Ukraine. They've remained silent on the current situation in the Middle East. Now, more than 23,000 people are said to have signed this open letter, which is calling for Israel to be excluded. The Biennale has rejected that call. However, the doors of the Israel Pavilion are closed anyway because the artist, Israel's featured artist, who's called Ruth Patir, says the show will only open when a ceasefire and a hostage agreement has been reached. Let's have a listen now to the Venice Biennale's artistic director, Adriana Pedrosa.
It's not Israel's decision, it's the curator's decision and the artist's decision. And I think it's a very courageous decision. And I think also I respect it, of course, enormously. It's their own decision. And I think it's a very wise decision.
Now, as you said, Eve, that was the Biennale's artistic director, Adriano Pedrosa. He's from Brazil, and this is the first time that someone from the Southern Hemisphere is in charge of the event.
It certainly is, and Adriano Pedrosa has chosen the theme Foreigners Everywhere for this year's Biennale. He's invited a lot of artists from the global south. He wants to highlight the less privileged and less industrialised regions. Now, there is a particular emphasis this year on celebrating indigenous artists from countries such as Brazil, Peru, New Zealand and the United States. Many artists are talking about the subject of colonialism in their work, in their exhibitions, including artists who come from Ireland, France, Portugal, Ethiopia and the UK. We can have a listen now to the UK's representative. It is the filmmaker and artist John Akomfra. He's been talking about colonialism in his work since the 1980s.
This feels like a very significant moment for artists of colour, you know, because I'm in the British Pavilion. Next to me is a French one with an artist, Julian, who I love a lot, you know, of African origin. And then next to me is a Canadian pavilion that has, you know, biracial artists, again of African heritage. So, you know, that's certainly not happened before. That 3 major pavilions have artists of color inhabiting, occupying, making work in them. And that feels like a breakthrough.
Yeah, that's true, because in the past, the Biennale often shone a light on Western artists, but in recent years, that's been changing.
It certainly has, and this year Africa also aims to buck the trend of underrepresentation. There are 12 African pavilions. Benin, Tanzania, Ethiopia and Senegal will have pavilions here, national pavilions, for the very first time in its history. Ethiopia says this is an extremely significant moment for the African nation. Here's the Ethiopian artist representing their country, Tesfaye Jessa. He's known for his paintings depicting human bodies in the centre of domestic